Hello, homeless advocate Eric Jonathan Sheptock coming at you from the Hotel Arboretum in Northeast Washington, D.C., where I am in what may be my final hours of quarantine. It is Saturday, May 9th, the day before Mother's Day, and I entered on April 30th. The person who I know that contracted COVID-19, I had last seen them at least 4 days before that. So instead of having a full 2-week quarantine, I was told that my quarantine may be reduced to 10 days, which means I would leave tomorrow. There is a bit of a disconnect between different people who would influence that decision. So I can't say for certain that I'd be leaving tomorrow, but that was the impression that I was given by the one who seemed to be the most knowledgeable of the several people who gave me different dates. But anyway, what I want to address today is the Department of Human Services dysfunction before and during COVID-19. And I am referring to DC government's Department of Human Services. I want to say also that I made a video yesterday, May 8th, that has one mistake that I caught, and I decided to redo the video, but I also decided to add some stuff as well. So I'll be taking that video down soon. I made a lot of notes, and after I made a lot of notes, I realized there are some other things that I should include, so I made some more notes. So, here we go. Now, in 2004, DC government and related NGOs, nonprofits, came up with the 10-year plan to end DC's homelessness. I actually wasn't in DC just yet, but I've studied up on some stuff and learned that in 2004, January 2004, DC counted 8,253 homeless people. It takes them a while to tabulate all the numbers. So the numbers used to come out in April. Now they come out in May. Today is May 9th, like I said earlier. But the numbers haven't come out yet. They will probably come out within the next week, and that's assuming that people don't get hindered by the COVID-19 issues. Many people are working from home, so you would think that they would do this tabulation at a faster pace, not a slower pace, but I'll leave it there. Anyway, in 2004, we had 8,253 homeless people. Later that year, they came up with the 10-year plan for addressing homelessness. The plan went into effect starting on October 1st of 2004, which technically is considered to be fiscal year 2005. But in 2005, we see that DC had 8,977 homeless people that January. And I haven't been able to find out from anybody why the numbers shot up like that by more than 700 people in a single year. Maybe it was a sense of hope. Maybe word got out that the city was beginning to do something about homelessness, and so those who were couch surfing may have said, well, maybe I should present at shelter in order to gain access to this housing. So they stopped couch surfing at their mom's house or their brother's house or some other relative's house and went to the shelter. I don't know. I wasn't here. But in 2006, the number went down to 6,157 homeless people. So it dropped by 2,820 people in a single year. So maybe people lost hope and said, it's not worth me presenting at shelter in order to gain access to this housing. Maybe I should just go back to couch surfing at my relative's home. I don't know. But that's just a guess. In 2007, we had 5,757 homeless people. It went down by exactly 400 people from 06 to 07. In 08, we had 6,044 homeless people. Now, later that year, the city closed the Franklin School Shelter, and they began DC's version of permanent supportive housing, which at that time was focused primarily on the disabled homeless, those with mental and physical disabilities. PSH has been somewhat revamped at this point, and now you don't have to have a physical or mental disability. If you just have an extensive length of homelessness, then that qualifies you. So that's an important change to note. But let me go back and say that I actually came to DC in the summer of 2005, and I began advocating for the homeless in June of 2006. So I came during the year that they were experiencing that massive decrease from 89.77 down to 61.57. But in 2008, we also got the economic downturn. That happened in the fall of 2008. Things were building up to that for like a year or two, but we recognized it in the fall of 2008. So in 2009, surprisingly, we didn't get that many more homeless people. We went from 6,044 to 6,228. In 2010, we had a similar increase to 6,539. 2011, we went up to 6,546, a mere 7 more people. In 2012, we went up to 6,954, which is a 408 person increase in 1 year. So we made up for the previous year, having only increased by 7. The average increase being about 200 per year. And then in 2013, we went down by 95 people. That was less than 2%. It's not considered a significant decrease. But then in 2014, we shot up to 7,748 people, which was an increase of 889 people in a single year. What's notable there is that in 2014, at the June ICH meeting, the Interagency Council on Homelessness, they didn't have their regular conversation around the homeless numbers. So we count them in January. We used to get the results in April. In the last few years, we've been getting the results in May. So in June of 2014, we had what was at that time our bi-monthly ICH meeting, where a bunch of people from different departments of DC government, as well as service providers like shelter providers, as well as the homeless and the general public can come. And there are times we have 100 people at the meeting. And normally at the meeting that follows the publishing of the homeless point in time count results, we talk about what the numbers mean. So the results came out in May of that year, and the next meeting was the one on June 17th, 2014, and there was no conversation around the point in time count. And I did email somebody. I actually emailed a bunch of people, and one of them responded, and he says, it's my duty to bring forth those numbers to report out on the results of the point in time count. I wasn't asked to do that. What's notable is that there is a woman named Christy Greenwald. She became the first ever director of the ICH officially on April 28th of 2014. Now, she had been on the scene a little before that, getting to know people. And before she came along, it was the duty of the city administrator to organize things around the ICH. He was the highest ranking person on the ICH, and technically he still is. And Christy Greenwald actually answers to the city administrator, but before April of 2014, there was not a designated ICH director. I'm not going to try to explain DC government's logic in terms of how they form these positions. I'm just going to leave it there. But anyway, in 2015, we went down by 450 people to 7,298 homeless people. January 2015 is when the current mayor, Muriel Bowser, became mayor of DC. We had the homeless point in time count a few weeks later. She was inaugurated on January 2nd. And the last week of January is when we had the point in time count. That is actually a HUD regulation for all cities that receive HUD money. And 2015, like I said, we counted 7,298 homeless people. In 2016, we counted 8,350. That was an increase of 1,052 people over a single year. People said, including people in Muriel Bowser's administration, but also others who are not part of the administration, argued that what had happened was the previous mayor, Vince Gray, had some very strict rules around access to shelter, and Muriel Bowser had more lenient rules that really opened the floodgates, and people who needed shelter, even when Vince Gray was mayor, came out of the woodwork and presented that shelter during Muriel Bowser's administration. And that's a credible argument. I'm not arguing against it, but I will say this, that even if the previous administration is to blame, then the current administration still has to fix the problem. Okay, you can't just say, well, hey, because the previous administration screwed up, I'm just going to blame them and not try to solve the problem. Of course, you got to solve it. But that said, these numbers that I'm giving you are numbers that I actually wrote down from memory, but I didn't commit the numbers to memory for 2017 or 2018, so I'll have to skip those two. But in 2019, I believe we had 6,521 homeless people. So that's a net decrease of 11% from the time that Muriel Bowser became mayor in 2015. And if you go from the 2016 number, then it's a 22% decrease, from the 2016 being the year after she became mayor. But that said, we have a bit of a glitch pattern here. And I'm actually going to try to guess what the numbers might be for 2020. Some people believe that there will be a small increase or decrease, maybe a couple hundred either way, from the 6,521 we had in 2019. So that puts us somewhere between 6,300 and 6,700. And I should also add in that people always doubt the numbers and figure that there are some who were missed when counting those sleeping in the street. And DC actually has a lot of people sleeping in the street these days. During COVID-19, The street homeless are more visible because there's nothing else happening around them. And I mean, all you see are dozens and dozens of tents all over town. It looks almost like a third world country. But so we may have somewhere between 6,300, 6,700 in 2020. Well, of course, that would be the January number. The count's always done in January. But then we have COVID-19, which became an issue after that, even though it was the last few days of December 2019 when we first heard about COVID-19 in China. Of course, under Trump, we have had a slow response, and a lot has gone wrong. I don't think I need to expound on that. But oh man. So since the January count, we don't know how many more people have become homeless. And so by the time that we actually get the results from January, well, they'll be moot. And who knows, we may have 400 or 500 more homeless people than we had in January. And that's being a little conservative there, in my guess. But it's time to look ahead as well. So let's go back to 2013. In 2013, we learned that we had a decrease of 95 people from the previous year. And as we talked about the results of the count that year at the ICH meeting, it was said that we believed we were still getting people who were just kind of falling off the cliff because of the economic downturn in 2008. There actually was not a massive increase in overall homeless people in 2009 or 2010. We gained about 200 people per year. But then we had a larger increase from 2012 to 2013 of about 400 people. And then we had a really big increase of 889 people from 2013 to 2014. And so at the 2013 ICH meeting, they were actually bi-monthly at the time, but at the meeting that immediately followed the publishing of the point in time results, we talked about how people initially, during the economic downturn, they didn't get laid off right away. It took some time for the company to go downhill, and then for people to get laid off, and then they began to live off of their savings, and then they went to sleep on a relative's couch, and they may have gone to another relative's couch, and on and on. And finally, they burned all their bridges, all the doors closed, and they presented at shelter several years after the economic downturn. And of course, there were those who got on their feet within those 5 years and didn't present the shelter at all. But those who just couldn't recover for some reason, in some cases, didn't present to shelter until 5 years or so after the economic downturn. And so what that means then is that with this economic downturn of 2020, we may be reaping the results of it until 2025. But then again, companies going downhill is happening at a faster pace, because you have companies that just can't do any work at all, or they're down to 25% of their normal capacity, and they just have to lay people off. And so that part of the economic downturn is happening at a faster pace, people losing their jobs. And so who knows? The next year or two, we have to guess, we never know for certain, but I'm guessing that in 2021, we're going to need at least 8,000 shelter beds in DC, that we're going to go up by more than 1,500 people. And that by 2022, we may have as many as 10,000 homeless people in DC. And so I would hope that the administration would prepare for that and I don't see where an educated guess by them could be much lower than what I'm guessing. So 8,000 homeless in 2021, 10,000 homeless in 2022. Oh, and by the way, the current mayor, Muriel Bowser, she's up for re-election in 2022, and she will leave office on January 2nd, 2023, if she doesn't win a third term. But there's plenty more to say about the dysfunction of DC government's Department of Human Services. I know I also mentioned the ICH, Interagency Council on Homelessness. Department of Human Services has been around for decades. The ICH was actually formed in 2006. I went to their first meeting. I began advocating for the homeless in June 2006, and later that same month, I went to the very first meeting of the ICH. Robert Bob was the city administrator. It would be another 8 years before we would get an ICH director. And so Robert Bob led the meeting, and it was held at 441 4th Street, Northwest Washington, D.C., which of course is a government building, but it's not the main council building. So let me jump to the present. Now, I might have said it earlier. I've said a lot, and I don't recall if I brought this up, but in a previous video that I made yesterday, May 8th, I did make a mistake. And I'm a big enough man to admit that I made a mistake. No pun intended, because I'm only like 150 pounds. But I decided to remake that video. And I think that being able to admit when you've made a mistake is one indication of a good leader. We don't have a good leader in the White House right now. Few people would argue with me on that. And when it comes to that poor leader that we have in the White House, you know, I mean, I saw his craziness in June of 2015 when he first came out on the campaign trail and announced his campaign for the presidency. I don't see how anybody could watch him on TV for 17 months of campaigning and not say there's something wrong with homeboy. We don't need him as president. Now, more than 3 years into his presidency, we see how poorly he's responding to COVID-19. Telling people that it might be a good idea to drink bleach. I mean, he didn't say they should, but he just kind of tossed it out there as something he was thinking, and posed it as a question. It's one of those thoughts you don't even want to get out of your mouth. But with him, there's just no holding back. I can proudly say I've never recommended that anybody who's not a Trump supporter drink bleach. And I will say this, though, that I did learn that nicotine might actually decrease one's chances of contracting COVID-19. And I also learned that blood thinners, when administered by medical staff, might actually help to cure COVID-19. But that said, let me get back to the homeless stuff. So, I was contacted on November 20th by a housing agency here in DC, and to this day, I've still not been connected to affordable housing. I knew at that time that if I were to go to a nonprofit in order to get help replacing my birth certificate, that it would take about 6 weeks for this birth certificate to get mailed here. And so what I did was I took a trip to New Jersey, to Atlantic City, and I picked up a birth certificate right around December 1st of 2019. And So I figured I would cut out about 5 weeks out of the 6-week wait. And that hasn't really helped a lot. It's been over 5.5 months, and I'm still not connected to affordable housing. And I do need to take a quick break. I'm sorry for this downtime, but okay, I'm back. And so I went to New Jersey. I got my birth certificate replaced. So then we know COVID-19, of course, began in the very end of 2019. Thus the name. But it wasn't until early March that DC really began to prepare locally for COVID-19. I got a call on March 9th from a radio personality, and well, actually, she's a radio station staffer, but she does the online written articles for that radio station, WAMU, out of American University. And so we did a phone interview on March 9th. The article was published on March 11th. I was one of several people that she quoted in the article, and I pointed out how that the years and years of games and failures by DC government to really draw down the number of homeless people and create enough affordable housing and so forth and so on, it's now come back to bite us in the ass. And I stand by that statement. And let me see. I got a lot of notes here. So I entered this quarantine that I'm in on April 30th. I had come in contact with somebody who contracted COVID-19. He was somebody that I've known for a while, that I'd see on a almost daily basis. My last time seeing him was either April 25th or 26th. I was contacted around 7 p.m. on April 29th, my deceased father's birthday, by the way, and I was told that he had COVID-19 and that I would need to go into quarantine. They said someone will be here to pick you up and take you to quarantine at a hotel within the hour. And then they came back a few minutes later and said, no, they're going to come tomorrow morning and get you. When I got up the following morning, I actually went to the shelter staff and said, hey, when's my ride coming? You know, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going out to get breakfast right now because I'm waiting for them to come and take me to quarantine, you know, and I don't know when they're going to arrive. And the staff told me, well, go downstairs to the clinic and talk to them. And I get down to the clinic, and they actually weren't even expecting me. But when I explained that I knew somebody who had come down with COVID-19 and that we were in close proximity to each other right before he went to the hospital, then they accepted me, and 2 o'clock that afternoon, I was brought here where I'm sitting. So, let me see my next point. When I was brought in, I went through a very brief orientation. I was told that the only person who can go to the store for me would be a case manager. I said, well, the only case manager I'm associated with is the one who's supposed to be getting me into affordable housing. They said, okay, well, that'll do. That's who you need to contact. I contacted that case manager, and that case manager said, no, I don't do that. And I needed some stuff from the store. I only had a few cigarettes left, and I called a friend. He said that he would go to the store for me. I used Zelle, which is a bank app similar to Cash App, and I sent him some money. He went to the store. What he does is not, I don't think it's considered to be case management, but he does work for an agency that helps connect people to jobs and job training. So maybe it qualifies, but he doesn't have a work badge. And so anyway, he brought the stuff to me on May 1st, the day after I got here. And they said to him, no, where are your credentials? And he says, what do you mean by credentials? And they said, well, we'll take it this time, but you can't come back. And then he told me what they said, and I called downstairs and I said, what do you mean by credentials? And they said, work badge. Okay, that's a lot easier to understand. But anyway, that delivery on May 1st included a 6-pack of Heineken. And, you know, I'm in a hotel room, I'm an adult, and despite appearances, I am at least 21 years old. And so you wouldn't think that would be an issue. But that said, let me see. So on May 3rd, I need to grab a sheet of paper for you. On May 3rd, I received 2 copies. I think the man just didn't realize he was giving me 2 copies, but he gave me 2 copies of this rule sheet here. It's got 3 pages. There's page 2 there. Page 3. It's dated April 30th, 2020. That's when it was drawn up. Let me see it. Okay. But this copy actually doesn't have all of the information needed. But